Nice crowd here today. I'm going to introduce Guy. Guy is then going to introduce Nick. Nick is not only a great entrepreneur, but he's also a good friend of the firm, and he's a client. So we're really happy to be able to sponsor this event today. So without any further ado, Guy Shiraki.
Wow, thank you. Well, I want to thank First Priority for having us here today and hosting us. It is great. During the course of the year, we have so many events, and whenever we can have them off-site, as wonderful as our chamber building is, we love the opportunity to showcase our member businesses and come out in the field and do that. So this is great. I want to thank Mike Stefano, who is our Secretary-Treasurer of our Board of Directors, very active in our board, and are the sponsors for today's event. So I want to thank you for your support to make events like this happen. By way of background, we had decided in 2018 one of the things we wanted to do, aside from our traditional events, networking events, or advocacy events, was to begin a series of conversations where we would have thought leaders, policymakers, authors, different leaders come in and talk to us about his or her perspective on different issues so that we could learn a little bit more in a smaller setting, have a give and take, and really understand, the idea being, yes, at the end of the day, you're going to hopefully know a little bit more about Nick, and you're going to know more about Saxbys, but we hope that you'll really maybe take some lessons from this, and maybe even from some of the questions or comments to help you in your own professional development or in your business as well. Hopefully it'll be not only entertaining, but educational. We had shared Nick's biography, and I'm not going to go through and read all that because it's exponentially more impressive than mine, so I don't want to do that in too much detail. But I think what you will find today through this conversation and through his remarks and the questions is that someone who's not only a successful entrepreneur and a leader in a business sense, but brings about his role as a CEO as not only the chief stakeholder or the leader of a business enterprise, but as someone who's truly leading a team. I think one of the things that will come crystal clear to all of us is that his focus on developing a team, looking out for the well-being of his workforce, that each man and woman on his workforce has a path to development, growing professionally, either in his company or elsewhere, and also his understanding of the role that his business plays in the economy, the importance of the successes, and I think all of that manifests itself in these new ventures on college campuses like at Westchester, where it is not only yet another place on campus where you can go and get something to eat or get something to drink, but furthermore, it's not even just your traditional, hey, there's a Subway on campus, you can get a job making sandwiches, which is great, but this is a different model. And I think everything you see in Nick's perspective and in Saxbys comes to fruition in this. Bringing these stores onto campus in a way that helps the students learn and grow and learn and put into practice everything they've been learning in the classroom. So we're very excited to have someone who Inc. magazine has recognized, I believe, 3 times as one of the fastest growing companies in the nation. Chambers across the region has recognized his leadership. We're very fortunate to have a great entrepreneur, but more importantly, a really great business leader bringing about a new model of success to help not only his company but his employees. We're very lucky to have Nick with us today, so I would ask you to join me in a round of applause in welcoming the CEO and founder of Saxbys.
So Guy and I talked a little bit earlier this week. I mean, I maybe would give you guys a little bit of my background, what led me to decide to create a coffee company at the height of Starbucks' fastest growing period of their impressive history. And then sort of I think a true entrepreneurial story, but certainly one for us, like a constant world of pivoting, constantly sort of running into brick walls and figuring out why how tall is that wall and how thick is it, and starting to pivot to go in different directions. But then I'd like to be able to just sort of turn it over to you guys. You guys are taking time out of your busy mornings to be able to be here, and so if there are any sort of pressing questions about what we have done or what we haven't done or anything that we have done that could potentially be helpful to you guys, I'd like to give you guys the opportunity to be able to ask those questions. So, the quick sort of like entrepreneurial background of this, I didn't grow up with going to Colombian coffee farms, or with my dad using a Chemex to make coffee in the morning. It was pretty much sort of the opposite. My parents were super young when they had me. I would argue too young for people to be having children, and so they didn't get a chance to get an education. And my parents pushed a lot of two really critical things on me. The first was, you're going to get an education. To this day, my parents still talk so much about not having had the opportunities in their careers because they didn't get the degree or diploma or those opportunities that come with going to college. And the second thing was to just enjoy what you do for a living. I didn't understand that second part for most of my life, but my first 18 years I tried to focus on school, because my parents did talk so much about that. And I didn't go to the greatest schools, like elementary school, middle school, like where I'm from Chicago. Didn't go to the greatest schools, but I did pretty well. And I had a 7th grade teacher tell my parents that you need to send him somewhere else for school. This just isn't going to be the right environment for him. And so my parents made a really tough decision. I started to commute about 50 minutes every single day to go out to this private high school out in the suburbs. And I didn't like it. For 2 years, I wanted to transfer. I didn't fit in. I really just didn't like it. I was 2 grades behind in everything, which was very humbling. But I didn't realize at the time, it was starting to teach me the importance of hard work and the importance that things aren't just going to come naturally for you. And I really had to grind. And I had some teachers and I had some coaches who told me, you can either sit in the corner and cry about this and feel sorry for yourself that you're 2 grades behind or that you're in a different environment, or you can work. And we will meet you halfway and we'll work with you. And so I was really grateful for those coaches and teachers who did that. I eventually caught up, I was the first person in my family to go to college, so I went to Cornell in upstate New York, but I had no idea what I wanted to study. I still find it fascinating when an 18-year-old actually knows what they want to study when they go to school. So I show up and I played baseball there. My baseball coach was like my second father. He was a groomsman at my wedding. And I told my coach, I have no idea what it is that I want to do for a living. My dad, when they found out they were having me, my dad started sweeping floors in a warehouse. My mom was a receptionist for a company, and they don't like what they do, and I don't want to do those things, but I have no idea. So for a semester, I wanted to be a lawyer. Another semester, I wanted to be a CIA agent. So I essentially have a government and economics degree, thinking I was going to go sort of in the political science realm in some form or fashion. I did an internship in finance in New York, logistics in Charlotte, real estate in LA, liked it all, didn't love, there wasn't one thing that really clicked for me. And at 22, my coach sort of reminded me, he's like, Nick, I've known you since you were 17. You've always talked a lot about wanting to make an impact in the world. What is it that you're going to sort of do to make an impact in this world? And I thought back over the time, if I didn't have a couple coaches and teachers who helped sort of push me in that direction or give me a kick in the butt when I needed it, I wouldn't be where I was at that time. But I also know, because I've stayed in such close contact with them, that those were the most rewarding things for them, where they could take someone who's a little bit wayward and give them an opportunity. And I really wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to be able to give people opportunities. And so when I was graduating school, I started to think that I wanted to create something. But the world of education is so different today than it was when I was coming out of school, or when some of you guys were coming out of school. We didn't teach entrepreneurship. We simply just didn't teach it. If you wanted to be an entrepreneur, if you thought you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you better have a mom, a dad, an uncle, a neighbor who can teach you entrepreneurship, because we weren't going to do it in higher ed. Fast forward to 2018, 18 years after I graduated school, it's the complete opposite. Now, I'm going right from here back to Community College of Philadelphia, where I'm on the board and giving a speech on entrepreneurship. So whether you're CCP, you're Harvard, you're Westchester, everybody in between. If you're a secondary school, I see elementary schools teaching entrepreneurship. Now the world has changed dramatically. So the reason why I felt like I was a square peg trying to fit in round holes graduating is that I ultimately needed to be an entrepreneur. I needed to be able to create something. And that's where the coffee business came in for me. About 5 years out, I did consulting out of school because I was just sort of biding my time. I needed to sort of understand business. I wanted to manage teams. I wanted to sort of learn, I think, those critical functions to any business, and consulting gave me some of those opportunities. But I chose the coffee business, again, not because I was going to Colombian coffee farms or my dad Chemex coffee for us in the morning. I chose coffee because I truly believe that it's the most inclusive business that there is. At the time, that I defined inclusivity from a consumer perspective. So, I got my first coffee in the morning at Saxbys Rittenhouse, which is where I live in Center City. And it's like every single morning I see the same thing. I see business leaders, people that are dressed nice, probably rolled out of a nice apartment that morning. And then there's someone put $2 in their hand because they were, putting their hand out somewhere on Walnut Street, and they're coming into Saxbys to be able to get a cup of coffee. I liked this business because whether you were rich or poor, you were black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, this business, the business that I wanted to create, would treat both of those people with dignity and respect, and there'd be something on the menu and an affordability for people of all walks of life. It's truly the most inclusive business that I know. The thing that I've learned over time, and Guy touched on this a little bit, 12 years in at this point, I believe that it's actually the most inclusive business from an employment perspective as well. And that's been really important for me, because I didn't want to just create a company that was going to make the best cold brew or make the best cure. Like, I think that we have the best product in the business, but the reality is a lot of other places make great product as well. You better do something more than just have great product. I wanted to win at human experience and hospitality, and I believe that business is a vehicle for good. I think that when you want to run a business and you want it to do well for the world, you're more apt to do it through business than any other form of organization. And so I wanted to create a business that could do it and could change lives, not just from giving a great smile, a great cup of coffee, or a cool cafe, but to change people's lives from an employment perspective as well. And today's an interesting day for me because I get to be out here with you guys. I got to drive by, and hopefully I'll hit it on the way out. Our experiential learning Saxbys at Westchester, which is a program that I'm just really, really proud of, and I think is growing really rapidly, and I'll talk a little bit more about. But I'll go to community college later today and speak, and then tonight, the reason why I have this terrible beard is I'm actually sleeping outside tonight. So there's an organization called Covenant House. It operates in probably 25 or 30 cities in the U.S., and essentially is a transitional homeless shelter for young people that are a little old for the foster care system, but too young to be like adults sort of on their own. It's heartbreaking to me to think that in America, or any country for that matter, but certainly in America, we've got young people that are homeless. It breaks my heart. And so I was introduced to Covenant House a few years ago, and so we've created a jobs program with people that are coming out of homeless shelters and coming into our company, many of which have been promoted countless times. One of which, the first person we ever hired was a young man named Dante, who's become sort of like my brother. He was 17 years old. He's now a team lead 3 for us, which is the second highest level in any of our operational systems. He's on full salary, full health care. He has 2 sons now. He's never met his dad in his life, and he's like this doting father to his sons. It's a really, really game-changing opportunity for him and for others that will follow in his footsteps. But tonight they do a program where business leaders who are partnered with them sleep on the street. So I'm really, really excited to be able to do that. But more importantly, that I look at someone like Dante. I'll never forget meeting him in the conference room in the Covenant House in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. It was a sad place. It's meant to be like a college dorm, but it looks like a low-security prison. And I saw this young man sitting in there at 17. Someone gave him a blazer that was like 3 sizes too small for him, but he was in there to interview with me. And I hired him on the spot. And I look at him all these years later, and he is just doing phenomenally well. And the coffee business, I truly believe, is like what's allowed us to do that. I don't need someone to have a PhD from Westchester to be able to come in and learn how to take care of our guests. And when they can learn how to take care of our guests, we can start to teach them what we call the 3 pillars of our business: of team development, community leadership, and financial management. I can teach those people those 3 pillars, and they can move into leadership positions, because this is not a business where you need a PhD to be able to grow real, meaningful careers where you can make real money, take on real ownership of what you're doing, and actually be able to enjoy what you do. And so that's why I got into the coffee business. I got in, knowing this much of the industry, but every time I've gotten to know more of the coffee business, the more I realized that was such the right decision for me. I truly believe that this was the right industry for me to be able to get in, because I'm competitive. I'm a former athlete, but I'm just competitive. I like competing. I don't look at Starbucks growth and Wawa's growth and Dunkin's growth and all these competitors and cower from that. That excites me. I think that it just shows that my industry is big and my industry is strong. And as a competitive person, I like being in the for-profit space, because I have to bring it every day. I can't have good Mondays and bad Tuesdays and good Wednesdays and okay Thursday mornings. I have to bring it every single day. It's what I like to call sort of healthy paranoia. I wake up with paranoia every single day, but if I'm learning to channel it in a more healthy way, I think it becomes a big competitive advantage for us. But it also just opens up the doors for us to make such a difference in people's lives. We entered 2018 with about 275 team members at Saxbys. I have my HR meetings on Wednesday, so I know this number to the T, but we have 679 people in Saxbys right now. About 11% of what we call community hires, so people that were formerly incarcerated, formerly homeless, high school dropouts, that you wouldn't know the difference for those of you guys that go into Saxbys locations, particularly 30th Street Station, if you go through there, that cafe has 20% of that cafe are community hires. And I get text messages and emails from people all the time. Business leaders like you guys, Michael Solomonov, this very famous restaurateur in Philadelphia, like texts me all the time. Like, you know, that is the best hospitality in Philadelphia. And that hospitality is being given by people who dropped out of high school, potentially were homeless, or potentially previously incarcerated. And more importantly, it's not just getting a great job, but turning those into careers. You know, like people, I don't think that people want to be baristas their entire life. But I believe that if you can learn great barista skills, if you can run a really busy cafe and you can interact with hundreds of people every single morning, you put smiles on people's faces and people like working with you, you have the foundational skills that you need to be able to start building a career. Because I believe that every one of you guys in this room have gotten to where you are, not just because you're smart, but more importantly because you have power skills. You have emotional intelligence, you have critical thinking, you have cultural agility, you have confidence, you have a healthy paranoia to what you're doing. Those are things that are really hard to learn in a classroom. You have to learn those things by getting experience. And I don't care if you're born in Germantown or if you're born in Lower Merion or anywhere in between, most people have those skills. They need employers, they need leaders to be able to give them those opportunities and be able to sort of put their arms around them and develop those things. And so that's where our experiential learning program comes in. You know, I started Saxbys originally as a franchise business, simply because, one, I didn't know much about business, but also because I was a team sports guy. I loved the idea of entrepreneurs working together. You know, I watched my parents who feel like they're robots at their work and feel uninspired by it. And I was like, I don't want a bunch of robots in my company. Like, I wouldn't want to work like that, so why would I create a system where other people were going to work like that as well? And so I felt like franchising was a great sort of competitive niche for me. It was also that Starbucks didn't franchise, you know, and that it was an opportunity for you to sort of get in this business. But I started franchising way too early. Like, literally, I started the business and 1 month later I started franchising. Most of you guys in this room know you start franchising because you create a model, you make mistakes, you make it a little bit better, you make it a little bit better, and then you've got a model that people should invest money in and then can entrepreneurially run it. I put the cart before the horse, and we had enough success with it that we attracted a private equity group, and private equity group invested in Saxbys. And my first board meeting with them 4 years ago, Bob Brown, who'd been in the private equity business nearly as long as I've been alive, was like, here, Nick, I'm gonna give you a couple rules of private equity. The first is, we don't make money unless you spend money. So no one could chop up a dollar at that stage in my career like me. Like, I could stretch a dollar a really, really long way. He's like, you're gonna have to learn how to spend some money because that's how we'll grow this business. And the second thing is like, we're not here to run the business. You know, like, that's not the way we operate as a private equity group. We believe in you, we believe in your vision, but we're here to help you remove obstacles. You need to think critically about what you're doing well, what you're not doing well. And at the same time, I became an entrepreneur in residence at Cornell's hospitality school. So I was an arts and science guy. Cornell has a very famous, what they call the School of Hotel Administration, but we call it sort of the hospitality school. And they were really the first ones to dive deep at Cornell into entrepreneurship. And they got this huge grant. They opened up the Pillsbury Institute of Entrepreneurship. And one of the cornerstones of this was this entrepreneur in residence program. So I became one of the first 2 entrepreneurs in residence. And when the dean called me, I was like, Dean Johnson, I'm like, let me lay a couple things out. First, I'm not a hotel grad. He's like, I know. Second, I think I've had more failures than I've had successes as an entrepreneur. He's like, I know. And third, I was like, did you look at my transcript at Cornell? He's like, I don't want to look at that. He's like, I can take a guess. But he's like, those are the reasons why, like, we want you in our classroom. We want, like, students who are thinking about being entrepreneurs don't need to hear about all your great decisions and how smart you are and how successful you are. They need to learn why did that mistake happen? Like, if you could do that over again, what happened? Like, why is it important to write a business plan? Why is it important to get mentorship? Why is it important to have the right cap structure in investing in a business? And so, I started to do that. And I think for the first couple of years, I was getting more of an education than I was giving, because I was getting all these unbelievable professors, and I was reading all these pertinent things to my business. But I realized the critical hindrance to my business to be able to grow was franchising. It was really my critical hindrance at that point. But I'm like, how do you say, the main thing that we do is also my main hindrance to my growth? And I went to my board and I said, all right, we need to spend some money. I need to start opening up these cafes corporately. I need to figure out, because I can't be a good franchisor if we don't know how to run them ourselves. So originally we were just going to open up some corporate cafes so we could start to run these businesses ourselves and become a better franchisor. I think sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. The first two that we opened up essentially ourselves corporately were both essentially on or adjacent to college campuses. So Lehigh University was one of those, and we did pretty well with it for sort of from the outset. I said, you know what, I actually am enjoying this better. Because with franchising, you could have this mission, you're gonna have this mission statement to make life better, and you can have these core values, like you serve yourself by serving others. But if a franchisee doesn't really want to believe in that, they don't really have to believe in that. And then you're dealing with a contract, and you want to get into that kind of process of doing business. And so I said, you know what, I am actually enjoying this corporate. There were a couple of critical things that were happening. We had built an infrastructure as a franchisor to support entrepreneurs to be able to run their own business was one. The second one was my best performing locations have always been around college campuses. I wish I could say when I approved a friend of mine to open up the original college location at Saxbys at Georgetown University, that I was like, colleges are going to be our future. I didn't know that. I remember him telling me he was about to invest his life savings. Jack Aguilera, a good friend of mine, and we were standing at 35th and O Street. It's like Georgetown's main gates are here. This thing had been a diner for 65 years called Sugar's. It was a legendary place. And people were, I think, were going to pick it out in front of it. They're like, oh my God, you repositioned Sugar's. I didn't know it at the time, but the house that was right behind us, that we were standing looking at this when Jack was about to fork over his life savings, was Kevin Plank's grandma. And Kevin Plank started Under Armour in that basement. And so we were standing there, and Jack's like, Nick, do you think we could be successful here with Saxbys? I said, Jack, I have no idea, but I know that we will work our butts off to make sure that we support you well. And they opened up that location, it did really well. So we had always done really well on college campuses. I think the combination of our culture, our menus have always been unique and different from location to location, always designed differently. But then the third big factor at that time was universities were now teaching entrepreneurship. I saw it at Cornell, I saw it at Temple, I saw it at Drexel. Everybody was teaching entrepreneurship. And in the pedagogy of entrepreneurship in higher ed, this notion of experiential learning was becoming really important. And Michael Johnson was the tenure dean at the Cornell Hotel School. He's become a good friend of mine. And so we were talking a lot about this. And he's like, look, Nick, he's like, this is him talking about himself. He's like, I'm a pretty smart guy. Look at all those books that I've written. I've never run a business before. I understand business. I've written all these books, but I'm not going to be able to create experiential learning. And if I can't create it, I think it's going to be hard for most people in higher ed to be able to create something like that. I think it's this critical opportunity where industry, business leaders can partner synergistically with higher ed to be able to create experiential learning for business, for leaders. And that's when these drives to and from Cornell, we came up with the idea. We said, you know what? A bustling Saxbys cafe, you serve 1,000 people a day, 350 days a year, you employ anywhere between 35 to 70 people. All the moving parts that happen in any business happen in that business. Having to manage people, the hardest thing for probably everybody in this room. Having to deal with vendors, having to deal with competitors, having to deal with price changes, having to deal with weather, all these kinds of things that happen in any business happen in a coffee shop. But for 18 to 22-year-olds, the coffee shop is where they feel most comfortable. That's where they go to see their friends. That's where they go to read or to look at what's happening on their campus. It's the place, it's like this natural magnet of activity. And so I presented this idea to President Fry at Drexel in November of 2014 of opening up a Saxbys that would be designed by students from the Westfall College of Art, but then would be exclusively operated by students. To be experiential learning. And I was meeting with John at Park in Philadelphia. In 40 minutes, we had more than a handshake deal. He's like, Nick, this is amazing. Let's do it. What do you need from me? I said, I need good real estate, and I need the students to be exclusively ours. The student CEO, as we call him, the cafe executive officer, to be exclusively ours for 6 months. But nobody needs to stay in college longer. No one, especially no one needs to take on Drexel's tuition more, another semester longer. So you need to give them full credit, and we'll pay them and we'll support them. And John said, no problem, let's do it. And so at 34th, where Lancaster Avenue dead ends on 34th Street, we converted a two two-bedroom apartments into an 1,800 square foot cafe. The facade of the coffee bar is graffitied by students. There's hand-painted murals by Drexel art students. Plays music that I'm far from knowing or recognizing at this point. They're their own DJs. The music, I think, actually skips when I walk in at this point because everyone in there is so young. But it's a team of 38, 39 students. There's cafe executive officer. It's been exclusively run ever since. And the day that we opened, so April 13th, 2015, John and I took celebratory espresso shots behind the bar. We walked outside because it started to get super busy. And he walked right up to me. He goes, Nick, you need to work really hard with your team to figure out how to scale this because this is of critical need in higher ed. He's like, I've never seen parents, students, loan administrators demand a return on investment in education the way that they are today. And we can teach things in the classroom pretty well. We can't teach power skills. We can't teach people emotional intelligence and critical thinking and cultural agility. We can't teach those things, but you guys can. That's what's happening in this business. And so, quite honestly, I thought it's a cool one-off idea. Like, oh, it'd be cool to just have this one exclusively student-run cafe at Drexel. And John made me realize that it's a much bigger idea than that. And so, over the last 2.5 years, we have about 10 of those partnerships now. So we opened a second at Drexel. We're at Temple. Our second actual partnership was with Millersville, which was a special one for me because there were people who were telling me like we should just go to schools like Drexel, private, urban, co-op program. There's not a lot of those schools. There's Northeastern, there's University of Cincinnati, but our team started to see that you didn't need to just be at a private institution to be able to do this. And so a state representative out of Southwest Philly came to me and said, Nick, I just got elected to my board of trustees. He was the first person in his family to go to college. He's like, I know my students at my alma mater would be amazing at this. He went to Millersville. And so he introduced me to then President Anderson. I went out there on March 13th of 2016. And on January 30th of 2017, we opened an experiential learning cafe there that is an unbelievable place. I mean, there's 60 team members. We have a wait list of team members to join that cafe. It's unbelievable how that place has become such a hub of activity. And so the program has started to really spin, whether you're 7,000 students at Millersville, and just in September we opened at Penn State, which obviously has 60,000 students in University Park. And so we've now looked at the map, and we've got big schools, small schools, public schools, private schools, business schools, not business schools, and there's something really special there. And most importantly for me is like yesterday was our new CEO day. So once a month, the new CEO, every CEO comes in at least once a month, but yesterday was new CEO day. So it was a lot of our new student CEOs. And watching these 20, 21, 22-year-olds, who I know them from when they were interviewing, some of them had like a landscaping job, some of them like had a paper route. No one ever managed people. No one had ever seen a profit and loss statement. No one had ever had to come into my office and present a profit and loss statement. To watch them develop as professionals so quickly because they get thrown in the deep end and have to learn how to swim really quickly is special. Like the talent development side of this is really, really special. So we're at a really interesting crossroads right now because we've created a really interesting program that is obviously very culturally aligned with what we believe in. I think it's very timely, relevant as well. And there's just great opportunity to grow, so that healthy paranoia really kicks in for me where it's like, how do we really turn this thing up? Because we get calls from universities and colleges across the country to be able to do it, and I don't like telling anybody no. I like saying yes. I'm a salesman at heart, and so I like saying yes. And then all right, how do we do this, in that state, at that state, at that state? And so that's the critical thing for us right now. But I think maybe the greatest strength of all of this is that we're the first employer for most of our future talent. 18 to 22 years old, most of these young people are working with us at Saxbys. And so where are my future CEOs, where are my future coaches, where are my future marketing leaders? They're in my company. They're already in my company. And so we place such an emphasis on the talent side of our business. We have an entire department that's just talent development. We have a very big recruiting team. We have a very big HR team. We focus so much on getting the right people onto the bus and then keeping them on the bus by developing them. That becomes a big, big thing for us because I don't need to be standing at MIT waiting for the next PhDs to roll off the shelf. They're probably not going to be great culture fits for us, and they're probably not going to have the emotional intelligence that we want to have at Saxbys. The talent, the future talent that can allow Saxbys to go from 600 to 6,000 people is in my company. or continue to be attracted to my company when they roll onto campus as freshmen. So it's a tremendous opportunity, but it also makes my mind race. It also keeps me up at night in a really, really good way. So that's really what we're up to. I would say I would sort of leave it at this this second stage of the big part of our growth right now is, 4 years ago when MVP invested in Saxbys, candidly, I don't think we were good at much. I think we were pretty mediocre, maybe slightly above mediocre at most things that we were doing. And if you break down our business into its most critical functions, it's the 2 Ps, it's people and it's product. And one of those 2 things comes very natural for me. Obviously, it's the people side. I got into this business because it's the quintessential people business. And so I made the determination that if we're gonna get great at something, we're gonna get great at the people side first. And so that's when we built our company culture. And I realized that the franchising business was a hindrance to us because we would have some franchisees who were like, Nick, I'm totally down with the idea of you serve yourself by serving others, and we're a community serving our community, and our focus is to make life better. And then other franchisees are just gonna be like, Nick, that's cool, but I'm here to make money. And if you're gonna build a culture, you need everybody to feel like they're a part of that culture. They need to live that culture 24/7, 365. So we've since gone back and bought back every single one of our franchises with the exception of 2. So we're pretty much, and we haven't franchised in 3 years. So and I don't see franchising being in our near future at least. So really rallying around the culture side and not just being grateful for nearly having 700 people, but I feel with tremendous confidence, like I'll roll into Saxbys Westchester, I know with 100% certainty we have a team full of culturally aligned people. The reason for that is that our culture is so much more than me now. I know that the student CEO, Kelly Ingram, there is such a tremendous culture fit for us, but such a tremendous judge of talent. And she feels empowered as an entrepreneur to be able to build a team. So back in the day when we were a franchise business, I'd have a lot of concern if I jumped over to this location or this location, what was the experience gonna be? I don't anymore. Despite the fact that a 21-year-old is running a Saxbys right down the street, I feel great about the culture side. So although culture and talent is obviously a very dynamic thing, you never feel like you're done or you're perfect there. I love where we're at, and I love the depth of ownership of our culture throughout the organization. So now, over the last, I would call it 6 to 9 months, we've been focusing a lot of our time sort of on the product side. And my dream for Saxbys was always that each of our cafes was gonna be a neighborhood cafe. Westchester is a very different place than Millersville, which is a very different place than Temple. And I've always wanted my cafes to not only look different from each other, but for the menus to be really resonant with its individual community. We get the design side right. I mean, we've gotten very good at design. Saxbys Westchester looks unlike any other Saxbys in our system, and I think it was perfectly designed for that space and where it is. We get the culture side right because we have the CEO program. The product side is where we really need to have the time and attention. And so we've been spending a lot of time bringing people into the organization who are experts there, or culture fits, but are experts in that realm. And so that comes in sort of 2 key areas. One is coffee, and one is culinary. So we brought on a head of coffee about 3 months ago. He's actually flying back from Uberlândia, Brazil right now. So he has been deep in the jungles in Brazil for the last week, creating relationships and buying coffee because we're actually opening a roasting facility in Q1 of 2019 in Philadelphia. So we've been in an exclusive arrangement with a great roasting company in Seattle for the last 5 years, but it's time for us to sort of vertically integrate the business. It's time for us to control the supply chain from farm all the way through to consumer. And so I'm excited for that transition. And then the culinary side, we're gonna build a pretty large culinary team because I don't wanna have just one menu that goes to every single location. I want Westchester to have a different culinary menu than Penn State. And there's gonna be nice efficiencies and there's gonna be things that are well thought out. Breakfast burritos are a great seller for us on our college campuses, but Millersville students oftentimes, generally speaking, have a plainer palate than what we see at Drexel or Penn, and so understanding those things from a data perspective, from a focus group perspective, and then having the flexibility and the entrepreneurial ability to actually then be able to execute on the culinary side, that I think allows Saxbys to not just be a company with one really strong asset, the people and culture, which I think is, if you're gonna have one strong asset, I think that's the one to have, but to have 2 really strong assets, to have the people and the product side together, being culturally driven, being entrepreneurial. I think that's a business that can really grow. I think that's a business that can really scale. And I think just as importantly to me, it makes me put my head on my pillow at night and smile. You know, like I pinch myself that this is what I get to do for a living, and I know that Taylor, who drove out for me today, just graduated Temple, went to all of our social media, is incredibly talented. I think it's what puts a smile on her face when she goes to sleep at night, is that she can't wait to get back to work. She feels like the work that we're doing is important, and it's difference making, and we're enjoying the ride every single day. And you know, my parents, I talk a lot about my parents' situation. I know it makes my parents smile too. Not necessarily thinking about what they have to do the next day, but knowing that their oldest son gets to enjoy what he's doing. I think that's what parenting is sort of about. So that's sort of my entrepreneurial journey to this point. I still think that we're an incredibly entrepreneurial company. I like when people call us like a small company, because I think that that's our biggest advantage. You know, Starbucks is a massive company, very, very hard for them to innovate. That's a big ship and it's hard to turn. My ship is really nimble. We can turn our ship really, really quickly, and I think that our size, our lack of size as compared to a company like that, gives us a tremendous competitive advantage, and so I want to stay small. As I love my management team, I know it's tired of hearing me say this, but as we grow, we're going to get simpler. We just simplify and simplify and simplify, so much so like I have quarterly board meetings. I've been doing those for a long time now, and there's an exact agenda to what we do. My CEO meetings, which happen every month right now, so all my CEOs come into Saxbys corporate. My board meeting and their CEO meeting are identical. They're truncated, you know, like they don't have to present on quite as many things, but the exact same things that I have to present, what we call these 3 pillars: team development, community leadership, financial management. That's exactly what my CEOs do. So the board meetings that I go through are exactly what they're going through, because hopefully one day, they're going to be a private equity person, or they're going to create a business and they're going to be presenting to investors, or they're going to be scaling one of your businesses. But I think that they're getting the skills right now to be able to enter the workforce, not only ready to compete, but to enjoy what they're doing as well. You know, work needs to be fun. Like, how much do we all work? We work so much. Why would we do something that we don't love? Why would we do something we don't feel like we're making a difference in? And so I feel like it's tremendous responsibility for us with so many young people to teach them those things. Do not take a job because your dad told you to take this job. Do not go to do this because someone told you should do it. Do something that you love, and you won't feel like you've worked a day in your life, and hopefully you're going to make the world a better place. And that's what we're trying to do every single day at Saxbys. So I'll leave it at that, maybe, Guy, unless you feel like I missed anything, and I'll turn it over to you guys for questions.
So quick, how many stores?
32.
You sure?
Yeah.
And which is Penn State the one furthest away from the Delaware Valley, or?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have my original location in Atlanta. We moved into the Georgia State University's library, so that's technically the farthest away. That's one of the 2 remaining franchise locations. But as it relates to experiential learning, Penn State is the farthest away.
Did you open at Cornell?
We have not opened at Cornell, which I actually feel good about. You know, like I love my alma mater. They've been good to me. I think I've been good to them as well. But the opportunity is bigger than the quote unquote Ivy League schools. You know, so it's not really a huge priority for us right now. Like we're speaking to community colleges right now about this, because a student at Cornell, generally speaking, gets opportunities that most other students don't get. And so this is an opportunity creation for people. Like I think part of the reason why people love this so much at Millersville is they feel connected to this like big city brand. You know, they get the bucolic campus experience that they have at Millersville, but they feel tremendously connected. So many of those students spend time at our HQ. So many of those students now travel to go help us open or support other cafes. Like they're getting this big, big company experience while still getting that like down home feel of what they get at Millersville. So those are really our key priorities for us. And quite honestly, the Ivy League schools are just a little bit more controlling with crediting. You know, they oftentimes feel like the only way for these students to learn is with our professors. And we think that's a great way to learn. We think it's an even better way to learn when you get that experience and you get an industry leader to be able to put those 2 things together.
Well, as the father of a high school senior who thinks she's going to Cincinnati, I'll be back in touch with you. Bruce.
Of course. So Nick, we've had discussions. My daughter worked at the 34th store.
Oh yeah.
So great to meet you personally.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Question with your experiential learning and having the CEO, student-led CEOs and stuff like that. That's a like delegation on steroids.
Yep.
And how do you handle the accountability, the reporting, because they're operating their own? How do you keep it within your boundaries, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's a crazy level of delegation. Like in our research, we haven't seen anybody do something like this. You know, in fact, when we first opened up where your daughter Bruce works, 34th Street, the original one, we purposely, I don't know, it was my decision, it probably wasn't a good one, but like purposely didn't really promote it as exclusively student run, simply because we felt like the moniker, the notion of student run, the narrative of that was wrong. You know, people were like, oh yeah, the bookstore at my high school was student run, and it was never open, you know, and they never had anything. I felt like it was like I was giving them money for pity. I didn't want that. Like I wanted people to go in there and expect it to be able to compete with the Starbucks right across the street, with the 7-Eleven right across the street, with all this competition. And so for the first year and a half, we didn't really promote it as exclusively student run. And then Inc. Magazine wrote this article about the program, and I remember people reaching out to me being like, Nick, I go there like 3 times a week. I had no idea that was exclusively a team. That was a great compliment to me. It reminded me it was like probably a pretty bad decision that I wasn't promoting it as that, but it was more important to me that they were like, it's run at such a high level and such a consistently high level that they didn't realize it was student run. So that was really powerful for me. So I do genuinely believe like if people are going to be entrepreneurial, mistakes are going to happen. And I think that as organizations get larger, we become more mistake averse. Yet the irony of that is like as your company gets bigger, you're probably more able to sustain mistakes. You know, it's almost like if you're a small company and you make a critical mistake, it's more likely, the blowback of that is more likely to knock you on your butt than if you're a Comcast. You know, like if you've got entrepreneurial people out there making decisions and they make mistakes, you're more likely to be able to withstand that. But as I like to tell people, because I'm sort of a king of this, mistakes are great learning opportunities. You know, like I've made so many mistakes. I would chalk up my franchising, despite the fact that it led me to getting private equity investment, yada, yada, yada. Like we had enough success with it, but I chalk it up now as a failure. I don't think I was a great franchisor. I don't think I set myself up to be a great franchisor. But if we hadn't franchised, I would have never come up with the idea of experiential learning. You know, so my greatest mistake, I think, led to our greatest sort of creation. And so now we get to X that by 32 CEOs across cafes, where the average age is 24. The average age of the entire company is about 22.1. So it is young people making mistakes. And so we've built a corporate infrastructure. You know, the HQ, it's really just a support center, or a servant leadership center, as we call it. We're there to be able to support young people making their decisions. You know, we need them to be on the ground, have critical thinking abilities, and have emotional intelligence, be guided by our mission core values, but know if a decision's too big or they're too nervous, they don't know which way to go. The entire HQ exists for that reason, you know, and so mistakes happen, but I knock on wood, I love seeing the mistakes that we're making. You know, I love seeing them, because the only mistake that I really don't like is the mistake of not taking initiative. When someone sits around and like, man, I really could have done that. I could have done this. It would have been a good idea to do that. That's a bad mistake. And instead of making a mistake, to be like, I'm going to give free large, you know, strawberry banana smoothies, like an expensive product for us to make. I'm going to give a free one to anyone who walks in today. I don't know if that's going to be the greatest idea, but do it. And let me know how it came out. What did you learn from it? That's a mistake that I can deal with. And it's hard because the inertia of higher ed is like our educational system is essentially not about not making mistakes. You know, so at a young age, it's like, here's your syllabus, here's what you have to read, here's what your tests are. The better you are at following our instructions, the better grades you're gonna get. The more pat on the back you're gonna get. Entrepreneurship is the complete opposite. It's more about like, this is what everybody else is doing, what if I do it this way? And what if I'm willing to like fall on my face and learn something? So it's almost like we have to reprogram the students to be more entrepreneurial than the educational system sort of allows them to be at this point. But it's a challenge that I love. I love taking that challenge on.
Paul?
Yeah, I was going to focus on the mistakes of business. And when I first got the message about you presenting, I was like, Saxbys, so 2008. My experience was very good when you first started, and then a franchise opened in Kennett Square.
Right.
And it shut down within 2 years.
Yep.
And you know, I thought, well, they weren't able to, you know, keep in the business. And so your message is very interesting in terms of where you're taking this, and the fact that the franchise model is just a failure. You know, it's interesting that it's just impossible to carry that message that you shared so nicely. I think you're gonna do really well with this concept.
I
You
appreciate
are
it.
doing well.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I wish I could go back in time and learn it, but that's, yeah, the whole essence of like learning and growing. Because I actually do love franchise. I have taught a franchising class at Drexel. I love it, but you have to do it at the right time. When I was trying to franchise, it was not the right time, meaning we weren't ready to franchise. Like we didn't have a franchisable model at that time. But in many ways, our experiential learning program, and specifically our CEO program, is that. Like, no one has ever asked a CEO, like, what are your job responsibilities? Everything is your job responsibility, you know? And so I wanted that program. I was the only person at Saxbys when I wanted what used to be called, we went from franchising to cafe managers. Cafe managers seemed too robotic to me, and so I really wanted to create something different. And I went to my management team, and I was like, I want to call them CEOs, cafe executive officers. I don't think they laughed, but they were like, Nick, that's the stupidest idea. Like, companies don't have more than one CEO. I'm like, that's exactly why I want to do it. You know, I don't want this, but I get to be the person who sits in front of you guys and talks to you about it, but I'm not the important person at Saxbys. I'll serve no guests today. I'll make no money for Saxbys today. Like, I want the real talent to have a moniker that goes with it, but I also want people to know that when they come into the business, they're going to be a CEO, not because it's a cute name, but because they're all your responsibilities. Kelly Ingram's 21 years old. If that building caught fire tomorrow, I expect her to be the first one there with the fire department. You know, if a team member issue happens, I expect her to be there. I've met her parents. She's been on TV with me. Like, this is a hard job, but if you're gonna opt in and say, I want to be a business leader, I wanna learn what it's like to take on an organization and manage people, you better step up. It's gonna be hard. And I'm not gonna protect you from it. I'm gonna support you through it. But we're gonna absolutely put you into the deep end with lifeguards around the pool. We'll pick you up when you're starting to float or when you're starting to come down, but I'm gonna expect you to start correcting your stroke a little bit and start swimming. And so that's why we built that program. But a lot of it was lessons learned of just not being a great franchisor.
Can you speak a little bit to how you mentioned that you've got a long waiting list, and I'm sure that's probably a common scenario at your various different locations. Can you talk about how you go through those candidates and how you vet them for what position, how they progress through the program, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's the simplicity of it is really important. So we have a great recruiting team. We have a bigger recruiting team than most people would think because talent is obviously so critical for us, but also inherently we're in a high turnover business. Like, just based on the industry that we're in, when you're paying people generally hourly, you're already in a high turnover business. But then you're employing college students, none of which are showing up to college being like, oh, I'm gonna major in coffee shop. Like, they're inherently looking at other things as well. And so you're layering sort of turnover on top of that. So instead of like fighting against it, I was like, let's go with the flow. Let's have a really big recruiting team. Let's be very pervasive on campus. And so, but we hire everyone for the same reason. Like, we hire everyone for the same reason. Our mission core values. Like, do we think that you have a personality match with our company? We don't hire to hard skills. In fact, if you were trained on how to do latte art or pull espresso shots or what coffee or hospitality means by somebody else, it's usually that's not usually a big plus mark for us when we're looking at people. We like people greener that have great personalities, you know. And so when people come to our headquarters and interview, our office is set up in such that we have this massive wall. It's 18 feet tall and like 50 feet wide. It's got our mission core values, and the coffee bar is actually behind you. So it's a massive training coffee bar. People are purposefully sat with their back to the coffee bar and their face to the mission core value wall because you're getting a quiz essentially in the interview, and the answers are on that wall. You know, if you're like, serve yourself by serving others, that sounds like the biggest BS that I've ever heard. You're probably not going to get that job. I don't care if you have a 3.9 from LeBeau at Drexel, you're probably not going to get that job because your 3.9 at LeBeau is just not that important to me. But if you're like, I wake up every single day and I try to do something nice for people, or I realize like it's doing something nice for someone else makes me feel a little bit better than just buying myself a new blazer, like, you're probably in the right place. And they might point at the espresso machine and be like, that's a cool blender. Be like, oh, that's a blender, but we can teach you that, especially if you're culturally aligned to this. So for us, it really is culture fit. Like, that's what we teach because, again, it's not rocket science. Like, we're teaching people that are formerly homeless, they're 21-year-old undergrads, who every one of them say, like, I ask them about the 3 pillars. What are you going to do best? What are you going to do? What's going to be the hardest for you? I've gotten the same answer. I've interviewed over 250 CEOs at this point. Team development will be easy for me, Nick. I was the captain of my cheerleading team. Like, that's going to be really easy for me. the P&L is going to be so hard. And I sort of smirked to myself. I'm like, all right, team development's always the hardest. I was like, captaining your cheerleading team and being the boss for 35 people in a business that operates 15 hours a day, 7 days a week is really hard. I'm much older than you. I still struggle with team development. It's still the hardest thing. And a P&L, we teach anybody our P&L. It's not very complicated, our P&L. And so we look for personality, because if you believe in our culture, you're gonna be willing to work hard. When you sit in your first P&L meeting and you're like, this is like Chinese to me, if you're gonna wilt, and one of the other core values is care personally, communicate openly. We don't pull punches at Saxbys. Like we're pretty blunt. We're pretty direct with people in a manner of caring. We will never be disrespectful to people, but we are very blunt in feedback. And so if this thing looks like Chinese to you, and we're candid with you and where you're sort of struggling, and you wilt under that pressure, you're not a great culture fit, and this just isn't the right thing for you. It's not good for you or good for us. And so that's why we spend so much time. We literally go through our 6 core values and our mission statement at length in the interview process. And if we see the light bulb go off, and we see people's like eyes open up because of the core values, we're like, we've got something good, and we can teach them our business from there.
Jim, recognize Jim Lee. Jim is the chairman of our board.
Oh, very cool.
Hi, Nick. I've told you before, I appreciate your thoughts on culture, and I feel like it's very similar to what we have at Wallet. But one of the things that we don't do well is try ideas on and learn fast, right? To recognize that this isn't a good idea, stop now. We try, it plays out a little bit too long sometimes. How do you recognize that fast enough to be able to continue that entrepreneurial inertia, if you will?
Yeah.
And then how do you make sure that the rest of the team learns from other people's mistakes so they don't have to repeat and do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. I mean, I wish I could say that like our speed to market is just unbelievable. I mean, I think sometimes our speed to market is awesome, and sometimes it's not. I think right now, it was mentioned before, sort of like the culinary coffee side, we've been too lean in those areas. I think we're really quick speed to market culturally and people. Like for example, we've been growing so fast that the training department was starting to get overwhelmed, and so we moved. We have like you're hired as a what we call a host. So when you come in, you don't learn how to make anything. So you come into HQ, you get trained, 3 days of training on hospitality, like what we call hospitality. So it's what we call our home rule. So you treat people the way that they want to be treated. So there's a lot of ideas like you treat people the way you want to be treated. Someone who's trying to catch a train to New York at 30th Street Station wants to be treated versus someone who's coming over to Saxbys Westchester wants to sit for 3 hours. That person probably wants to talk to you a little bit about their night, their morning, that their friend is coming to visit them. The person at 30th Street is like, get this coffee in my hand as quickly as possible. So we teach a lot to how we look at hospitality. You then go to your cafe, and then you have shadow shifts with your CEO. Your CEO then decides whether they're going to reinvest in you to send you back for barista training. And then we have team lead 1s, 2s, 3s. So those become sort of like your assistant managers. So you couldn't enter training until you became a team lead 3 certified. And so we had this meeting, and I'm looking at our talent sort of pipeline, and I'm like, there's too much of a bottleneck at training. And so literally in that meeting, I have these talent meetings every single Monday with most of the operational leadership of the company. We made the decision that day we're going to bump that down to team lead 2. I had team lead 2s in training specialist training 4 days later. So like we do that really, really quick operationally. We're still not there from a product perspective. I think that's a big opportunity for us. The second part of your question, which is like how do you share these things, is that's why my size is still beneficial for us. It's like we can get together. Like we spend the money, we allocate the money to get people together. So these CEO meetings happen every single month. Our all hands on deck team meetings happen every single month. And even though these become the biggest circles of humanly imaginable, we still start every single meeting with what we call our mission moment. So we literally go person by person. I quote one of our core values in an experience that I saw somewhere within Saxbys of someone going above and beyond our core values. And then Guy goes. And then we go all the way around the room. And then it's a pretty open forum where we're talking about, hey, this person screwed this thing up at Drexel, here's what we learned, here's how we applied it forward. So the all hands on deck meetings have still been a huge benefit for us. What do we do when we're 5,000 people? Becomes harder. I think that's something that we're gonna have to figure out how to be able to do, or how we can even sort of regionalize. But well, I'm in a face-to-face business. You know, like we still really prioritize face-to-face as much as possible, despite the fact that it costs us more money. I think it's our competitive advantage. We don't do hospitality training through technology. We do it through face-to-face. And I meet everyone who comes through hospitality training. So they come in our headquarters, I meet them. It's oftentimes only 5 or 10 minutes, but I get to have a one-on-one conversation with them. And one of the things I always hear people say is how much they like that they get live fire in training. They get to actually talk to other human beings on the POS versus just doing it through technology. Like everybody wants to do that through technology right now, but I don't think that you can say you want to be a world-class hospitality company and then make everybody learn everything through technology. Hospitality is human beings to human beings, and so we've stayed a little old school with that on purpose.
Mark?
Hi, excuse me, good morning. I'm Mark Durkis with Drexel's LeBeau College of Business.
Yes.
I want to vouch for the 34th Street Cafe. As an old guy on a college campus, I appreciate the uniqueness. A couple of things that we've been focusing on is technological disruption, especially when you're thinking of some of the exciting technological advancements, IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, those types of things, and how that will impact. It's almost like business is on a collision course with this technology. So how much do you pay attention to that? How do you think that will impact what you do? And does some of this keep you up at night?
So thank you for the compliment on 34th Street, Mark. So yeah, I do. There's actually a phenomenal book on that right now that a lot of us have been reading at Saxbys. It's actually written by the president of Northeastern. So obviously like a sister school to Drexel. So President Ayoun wrote a book called Robot Proof. And I'll never forget when the book was being teased by the Wall Street Journal, I was like, oh, robot. I admittedly, anything higher ed, I'm like very interested. I read the Chronicle right now, which is probably the most depressing thing, publication that exists, but I read it. You know, like I'm very interested in anything in higher ed. And so I see this, like President of Northeastern wrote a book. I'm like, oh, I'm really excited. And I see Robot Proof. And admittedly, my first reaction is like, I don't want to read about machine learning. But then I read it and he's like, machine learning, AI, VR, all these things are here, and they're only going to become more part of our daily existence. But what machines can't do are what human beings are actually good at doing. The power skills, emotional intelligence, critical thinking. So his book is about the importance of doing exactly what we do with our experiential learning program. Is that technology is going to be here and it's going to wipe out jobs. The technology can just do better than human beings, but it's going to make the things that human beings can do far better than machines that much more important. So we've got to be able to balance those two things. And so I actually was very excited about that. We need to continue to figure out ways to be able to use technology beneficial for us. But like my good friend is Justin Rosenberg, the founder of Honeygrow, if you guys are familiar with Honeygrow. One of Justin's big things is that you order off of a really cool touchscreen. That's not a Saxbys thing. We will not do that. I do not believe in that from a hospitality perspective. Justin's not the same hospitality guy that I am. He's a tech guy, you know, and so like that fits his model very well. That does not fit my model. I might be able to use technology to speed the line up and be able to be beneficial for the human experience, but it's not what we believe in. So I actually think we're at this really seminal moment right now where these power skills are as important as they've ever been in the development of young people, because of this machine learning, the technology advances that we've made over the last 10 or 15 years. We're not going to reverse them. They're only going to grow, but human beings aren't going to go away. We need to rely on the things that we're naturally built. We are hardwired to be able to interact with one another, and those organizations like Drexel, those industry partners like Saxbys that prioritize and teach those things well are important. I think that's part of the reason why John was so excited to partner with us on this, is that he sees that. Like Drexel is a phenomenal organization, whether it be LeBeau or College of Engineering. I mean, you guys are ahead of the curve as it relates not just to technology, but getting students into the real world, learning from other human beings. And so that's my position on it. But I would really recommend to you guys to read that book. That book is fantastic. Robot Proof is a fantastic book because it puts on the table that machine learning and technology is only going to grow, but human beings need to be good at what human beings can. Our brain power is not capable of what these computers are capable of doing, but our ability to emote and relate to one another, machines cannot, and we don't see that happening anytime, at least in our future.
We have time for one more question.
And I know nobody else has put their hand up. So in the context that what your most important thing is what your business does. I use Apple as an example. They don't make phones and computers, they make design. They're a design company. What is your business?
We're a hospitality business. And so we're in the business of impacting human beings with other human beings. And that's what we're in. And so that has a lot of arms. But I mentioned it before. I mean, I think you guys are drinking the best cup of coffee that exists, but Wawa makes a pretty damn good cup of coffee, as does Dunkin', as does Starbucks, a lot of other places. I believe that taste of product is subjective. I believe human experience is very objective. I wanted to build a business that was built on something very objective.
Are you redefining what hospitality business means? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of these like rules out there that like hospitality means you treat someone the way that they want to be treated. We take a very different approach to that. Like you can't read. So if you, let's say that you work a shift at, I'll use those two examples, like Saxbys Westchester and Saxbys 30th Street Station. We serve 1,200 people a day at 30th Street Station. That kiosk is 270 square feet. So we have about 12 people working at any given time, and it's like 2 coffee shops pushed together, and it's just like this crazy, crazy operation. You cannot read someone's body language that they're trying to move to a train if you don't have emotional intelligence. If you're a robot who's just meant to be like, welcome to Saxbys, what would you like? You are not going to give someone memorable human experience. But if you have emotional intelligence and you feel empowered by your employer to be able to give someone a memorable hospitality experience and be able to change that between locations or time of day, that I think puts you in rarefied air from a hospitality perspective. And I think that that's what creates true loyalty in our business. It creates true loyalty when you're giving people memorable experiences. And obviously I'm biased that we do it well, but then I hear people like Michael Solomonov, I hear people like Rob Wunderling, I hear all these people who text me or email me being like, I can't believe how friendly those people are. Like, what are you putting in their coffee every morning? Nothing. They're drinking the same coffee as you. But they do a really good job of opting into working for this company, and we do a very good job of opening the gates for people that are culturally aligned and then empowering them to be who they are. I remember working at McDonald's as a kid, and it was like once you put on your, then they were these purple polyester shirts, like you had to act like what they wanted you to act like. And I just don't think that kids today are that interested in that, and I also don't think that that's going to allow you to be truly great in the people, the hospitality side of the business, which is what I think that our greatest strength is.
So before we go, I want to invite Laura Melfi. Laura is an officer here at the bank and want to say a few words as our host today.
Nick, wow, what a story.
Thank you.
I mean, very impressive. You have a lot to be proud of, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Guy, thank you so much for hosting your meeting here. We're very appreciative. This room is always open for groups to use. We don't charge you anything.
Nope.
But we just wanted to take the time to thank everybody for coming. We really appreciated all your time to be here. We heard a great story. We heard a lot of good things. And I would like to introduce a couple people. Ken Collin, he's our commercial lending manager for Chester County. We've got Cliff Purse and Fran Connors that are commercial lenders. I'm the cash management officer with the bank. And just a little bit about First Priority. We were acquired by Mid-Penn Bank out of Millersburg, just north of Harrisburg, August 1st. And what it's accomplished for us is we went from a small community bank to a little bit larger community bank, but they're all about customer service, and we have all the tools and services to offer any business or consumer. But we wanted to thank you again for your time, and we really appreciate y'all being here, and enjoy the nice weather that's coming.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. After Laura's going to give us a little tour of the vault next door, and you can have samples. So thank you everyone for being here and making this an enjoyable event. We are going to continue in 2019 with our conversation series, and by the beginning of the year we'll have the guests we'll be having and featuring throughout next year. So with that, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Nick, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. I have to run to CCP, but please reach out to me on LinkedIn if you guys want to get in contact with me in any way. I would love to communicate with you. But thank you so much for coming out on a busy weekday morning to have me here. So
great story.
Thank you so much. Sorry to run on you guys.
Thank you.
Can I get a quick picture of you two?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really, really, really.